الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله.
ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد نعلم أنك يضيق صدرك بما يقولون فسبح بحمد ربك وكن من الساجدين واعبد ربك حتى يأتيك اليقين. صدق الله العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. My dear respected elders and brothers in Islam, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He alone is worthy of worship, and we send peace and salutations upon our last and final messenger, Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, amongst the greatest gifts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is the gift of Iman, and being from amongst the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As we know, the greatest ummah, the greatest nation, out of all the Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. And of course, first is believing in the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the risala, the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then comes on what? The continuity of doing the amal as-salihah, of doing the good deeds. And this is the focus, for as much time as we have in this dunya, and we would like to speak upon that, is that in this life, our job is to filter out what this dunya is throwing at us and continue on doing the good deeds. And subhanAllah, we read this ayah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Hijr in the closing verses, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and telling him that, that there are people that what they say is going to displease you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to the Prophet of Allah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we know that your heart, your qalb, feels distressed for what they say. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gives the advice to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the order, that what should he do? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, so proclaim proclaim the purity and the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of your Rabb, and what? And be amongst those, وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ, those who prostrate, prostrate and do sajda before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That anything that they say, that's going to distress you. We know that it distresses you, but what's your way out of that? What's your way to get rid of that? Is that, proclaim the greatness, glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, proclaim the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just fall into your knees, go into sujood for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for your Rabb. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closes this surah, and the final verse of this surah is وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Such a powerful message. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَاعْبُدْ, and worship your Lord. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ, and just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until the time comes to you which is certain. SubhanAllah, this is something that even with this in the small ayah is so profound. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now it's like tying back to the verses that were read before, that people are going to say that, what religion are you following? How do you know there's an afterlife? What are you doing? You're missing out on the dunya. You could be attaining the dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Leave all that what people are saying. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising a time is going to come. And the time we already know is certain. But remember, as we mentioned in the previous lectures before, that there's a different type of certainty when a person sees it before their own eyes. The kuffar, the mushriks, the Muslim, the mu'mineen, the mu'minat, all these people, on that day, everything, Yawm al-Qiyamah, everything is going to be clear. Everything is going to be, as they mentioned in the Quran, ayn al-yaqeen. That not only are you going to have yaqeen, certainty, you're going to have the eye of certainty. This is, psychologists mentioned as well, that there's different levels of certainty. When someone mentions something to you, you can be certain of it, but when you see something, it's a different level of certainty. Someone says that there's a storm approaching, you don't think of it as much, but when it starts doing destruction to the houses and you see it, then the eye of certainty is different. And similarly, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us on Yawm al-Qiyamah. We want to be those people that were in the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that the people, the kuffar, the mushriks, look at the way that their life or their life will flash before their eyes, that everything they did, they knew that that which was certain, they left that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here that worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until that comes, the time of certainty. And subhanAllah, that also alludes to what? Maut. Because as we know, once maut comes, then the bridge between the, the ruh is bridged out between the body and the realm of the, barzakh, that you go into your grave, and then there's a realm. There's a different spiritual realm, and then there's a realm of living, which is this dunya. But once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pulls out the ruh, once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the order to the angels to pull out Malakul Maut, to pull out that ruh, everything becomes clear. Because many, kuffar, atheists, what do they believe? That, there's no life after this life of this dunya. That everything, what, is going to be black and black? Nothing is going to be seen, nothing is going to be felt. This is the, misconception and the deception of shaitan, that what you're doing is all futile, all batil. Na'udhu billah. They're trying to get us to a mindset that everything you do is going to be left here, so make sure you do not miss out on the dunya. But again, we've said it enough now, but that's what the ayah is saying, that to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until that time of certainty comes. Now, moving forward with that now what is that job of a Muslim? In every khutbah, more or less you'll understand something from any khatib, any imam, any scholar, that they're trying to make you understand. I myself am trying to make myself understand, is that what is the mission statement of a Muslim? As we know, once maut comes and the a'mal, that's when they cut off. Unless a person prepared themselves for something that they knew that they were going to die, and then they prepared themselves for sadaqah jariyah, and then the hasanat, they keep coming. That should be a mission of all of ours. Sometimes we see wellness projects, and we see these things. We should involve ourselves in these things. They're building wells in impoverished countries. They're doing community work, outreach work. That's something that Muslims should be involved in as well. Sometimes we don't hear it from our back home minded people. Of course, praying salah, reading Quran is the afdal, is the most virtuous. But remember that Prophet ﷺ had also alluded to this community work, seeing what the needs of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were. As we know, for example, if you look at, when you're talking about continuity of good deeds, a'mal salihah, how they last, look no further than example of Uthman radiallahu anh, in which he built a well for the Muslims, and until this day they're deriving benefit. The same people that were against Uthman radiallahu anh, they were deriving benefit from this well. And subhanAllah, till this day that well is like producing water, and it's bringing out water. But this is a what? Acceptance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in what? The acceptance of the deeds that they have done. So when a deed is done solely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that has continuity. It goes on to Yawm al-Qiyamah. Another example that we were hearing this whole week was before the Eid Salah, and then during the Eid Khutbah, is the sacrifices of Ibrahim alayhi salam. If you look at, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left a praise of Ibrahim alayhi salam for the later people. And then subhanAllah, look at the prophecy comes true, that every day in Salah, even if there's 2 billion people, Muslims in the world, and even 1 billion of them, inshallah, or more, are offering their Salah, that means billions of times, durood is being sent to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that we have left a word of praise for Ibrahim alayhi salam for the later people. So look at the time difference between Ibrahim alayhi salam and the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last and final prophets, the Khatam al-Nabiyyin, that till today in his ummah, the sacrifices of Ibrahim alayhi salam are being mentioned, and the the sabr and the sacrifices of his son. So that's something that correlates. There's a correlation between it. That when a person does something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those deeds, they're everlasting. They go until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts them in His court, and then people are following that. So subhanAllah, if you look at today, we're not only following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's the person we should follow the most, but also the sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's in a hadith, sahih hadith, authentic narration. When a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, Ya khairul bariyati, that O best of mankind. Now what does Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam respond with? First of all, it's the humility of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says what? No, dhaka Ibrahim. That's Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because someone addressed him as, you are the best of creation. But he says, no, that's Ibrahim alayhi salam. Even though we know the order, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But look at the humility of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying that what Ibrahim alayhi salam has done, that makes him the best of creation. And subhanAllah, this is something we also learn from Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, that especially the life of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that despite giving the titles, being entry into paradise, the continuation of the good deeds never stop. when the wife of the Prophet of Allah addressed him that, why do you stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, night in, night out, and your feet are swelling, even though you have been given basically guaranteed paradise and your sins have been forgiven? The Prophet mentions, that should I not be a grateful abd, should I not be a grateful slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And what's the way of showing gratitude? This is something that we have to understand, inshallah we'll touch upon it, is that the way of showing gratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is this was mentioned ayat al-Quran, wa'abdu rabbaka, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now look into the Arabic language. If the people who are Arab, they understand better than I, but just the wording difference in the word kufr and shukr. There's one letter difference, but that's the difference between iman and kufr. That when you have shukr, if a person has shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means they have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And kufr doesn't just also mean disbelief, it means the what? Ungratefulness. Anyone who is ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has undoubtedly what? Gone and treaded that line of kufr. This is why subhanAllah, even the Arabic language, these words are so close to each other. Just one letter difference and the whole meaning changes. But subhanAllah, anyone who displays shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, displays shukr through how? Through their consistent good deeds. They show that. And then the other person who does kufr, what is that? They're showing their na shukr, as they say in Urdu or something, that they're showing their disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? By not being grateful. And subhanAllah, there's so much to mention, but if you look at a hadith of Rasulullah in the Sahih hadith, in which he mentions a time of Bani Israel, there was a group of people, 3 people, individuals. We won't mention the whole hadith, we want to mention a few more hadith, but in this hadith you learn very valuable lessons, especially for those people who have come and set out on a certain journey from other countries. Right? There were 3 people, and they were afflicted with what? One was afflicted with leprous disease, which is a skin disease. Another was afflicted with blindness, he was a'ma. And another was, he was afflicted with loss of all his hair, baldness. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent an angel in the form of a human, in which they were addressed, all 3 of them were addressed that, if you were to change something, what would it be like? I wish my disease was cured. All of them wished for their calamity to be cured. And not only were their calamity cured, the person supplicated for them, the calamity was cured, but they also were granted with mal, wealth. As we know at the time, cattle, which is like livestock, goats, cows, and those cows have offspring. That's what mal was back in the day. That if you have cattle, then you're wealthy. You can provide yourself with milk, food, and then you can also make exchanges with those cattle. So not only were the calamities taken away, but they were also given mal, more than what they asked. Now the test, imtihan, comes in, right? In this hadith we learned that the test comes in. These people, now the same angel who came in the form of human, he comes in the form of a poor person. Same angel comes in the form of a poor person. He addresses them. And you know what he says? He says to the first person, the leper, the person who was afflicted with a skin disease, he says, I remember that your state was such and such, that you had a skin disease, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cured you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you wealth. Would you be so generous to share that wealth, some of it, just a portion of it with me? And what does this person say? He lies, he lies and he says, what do you mean Allah subhanahu? What do you mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my Rabb granted this? No, I didn't. No one granted this to me. I worked for it. Again, he's lying. So the poor person mentions, he says that if you are lying, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala return you to the state you were in. Right? Then he comes to the second person, the person who was afflicted with baldness, and then who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed with the hair and then the wealth. And he's mentioned that you were in such and such state, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed you, may you give me a portion of your wealth, may you just help me in my time of need. He says, what do you mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this to me? Again, he lies. He says, I was not blessed with any of this, I worked for it. And subhanAllah, he makes the same dua for him, that if you're lying, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala return you back into your former state. And then he goes to the a'ma, the blind person. And this is the person that passes the test of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because he knows where these blessings came from. Same thing was requested to him, that can you share a portion of your wealth and with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with you? And he says, yes, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with all this. I was blind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cured me of my blindness, and he gave me riches. So for you there's no limit. Do not, whatever you wish to take this. And then he tells him that, verily all of this is for you, I do not want any of it. This is only an imtihan. And your other 2 brothers, again this was time of Bani Israel, they failed this test of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reverted them back to what they were in. And for you, inshallah, you keep what you have. One thing we learned from is that many of us, if not all, a lot of us, that we have certain mindsets when we come from different countries. And what is this mindset? Is that we don't think of only propagating deen or following deen. That's in our head. The majority of the time is to gain wealth. and to make a better living, which is nothing wrong with that. But the test, the imtihan comes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings us out of that situation, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings us out of poverty, or we're in certain lands, wherever it may be, in Middle Eastern countries, in African countries, and Southeast Asian countries, in different Muslim lands that we're in. We come and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us some sort of affluency, some sort of wealth, and then we build upon that wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us, for 2.5% back. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to give sadaqah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to help those who are our neighbors in deeds. Again, continuing on these good deeds, not for, to help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but for our own a'mal salihah. So we have shown that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are grateful. We have shown shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in even a small capacity. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that verily you'll find many people, He told Dawood alayhi salam that, verily you'll find many people are ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but a few. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we may be amongst those few. That we want to be those who are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? So He can increase us in our blessings, so He can increase our standings on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So we come from certain levels of background, poverty has stricken us, and we make dua. You see people that they'll make dua day and night. Oh Allah, change my condition, change my condition. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being the most merciful, the most grateful, He does that for us. Many youngsters as well, when they pray for their studies, they pray that to get a good job, to help their family, and to, then they'll always make the intention that I will give back to the masjid, I will give back for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But very few do that what they intended to set out to do. Why? Because shaitan comes. Shaitan comes and he attacks in waves. First and foremost is what? The deception of independency. That you earned this, why should you have to give back? What have they done for you? What has this community done for you? And again, shaitan is very severe. It's mentioned that shaitan is very severe and persistent in his attacks and his wasawis. He does not let up. He does not let up. For him, all these things are for what? To get a person further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we don't understand. We think, oh, we're sinning just a bit, so it's not that bad because I'm doing a lot of good deeds. Shaitan's deception is such that he wants to get a person step by step further away. For a person who's, doing so much good deeds and he's constant in doing good deeds, Shaitan will not tell him to drop all of his good deeds. That wouldn't make logical sense, even if in the sight of a human, insan. He'll tell him that, okay, you're doing a little bit extra here, you're giving your, extra $100 a month to this charity. Why are you doing that? Do something better, or do something with this. Then he'll take that a'mal away. And then he'll ask you that, you pray all your fard salah, why are you praying sunnah? Why are you praying nawafil? Then he'll take that away. See how he's stripping back the layers of the good deeds that a person is doing. He wants to make sure that nothing is left, but he wants to do it in a methodical manner. Just like the way we earn money or we do a business. We don't expect to make $1 million the first day. We have a strategy and a plan. Same thing for students who are young, they study. You have a game plan of how they want to go about certain things. It's a step-by-step process. And similarly, shaitan's process is step-by-step. He's never going to tell a person that drop everything at once, especially these good deeds. And subhanAllah, these good deeds, they are the saving grace of a Muslim. Again, these good deeds, the a'mal salihah, the ones that are done truly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are the nur that descends upon a person. There will be the nur on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Last hadith I want to mention is lengthy, so we'll mention it now. It's a hadith in Sahih of Imam Bukhari and the Sahih of Imam Muslim, rahimahullah. And subhanAllah, from this you learn that never underestimate these good deeds because they can save your life. So subhanAllah, it's a hadith reported by Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anh, and he says that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrates, and he mentions that there was 3 men. While 3 men were walking, they were overcome by rain, and took refuge in a cave in a mountain. And a boulder fell onto the cave of the mountain and blocked the entrance, right? A boulder blocking them inside. One of them said to the others, so he's saying to his brother, his companion, that, look to your good deeds. He says, look to your good deeds that you have done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that you may call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah azza wa jal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala almighty by them, for perhaps He may relieve you. So just look to your good deeds and see if that can be your saving grace. He's telling his brother. And then one of them says, oh Allah, I have 2 old parents, and he says, with my wife and young child, and I tended to a flock, and when the evening came, I milked them and I served them, and I wanted to serve them. So he says, I wanted to serve my parents, but they were sleeping. He said, I wanted to serve my parents first, before anyone else, before my wife and my children, but they were sleeping, and I did not wish to disturb them. I found them both sleeping, so I milked them as I had done before, and I brought the milk and I stood before their heads, because I hated to disturb the sleep, or to serve my child before my parents. and my child was crying at my feet, yet I continued to stand over them until the approach of dawn. And he says that, O Allah, if you know that I have done this to seek your blessing, to seek your countenance, then remove this. Remove this. Then relieve me of this distress, that we might see the sky. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala makes it such that the boulder removes a bit, just a bit. Again, it's an authentic narration. The next person comes, and he says, another man said, "Oh Allah, I had a cousin." He says he had a person that he had loved very much so, and he wanted to marry them. And then she said that if you offer me a certain amount of money, then then I will come closer to you. Long story short, she said, I will come closer to you. And when the time came and he offered the money, she says, fear Allah, and do not take away my rights. So what happened? He controlled his desire and enough, and he walked away. He said, "Oh Allah, if I've done this for your sake, please remove this boulder, relieve us of this distress." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shifted the boulder a little bit more so they can see the sky. And then the last person comes, and he says that, "Oh Allah, I employed a worker with a portion of rice, for a portion of rice. When he finished his work, he said, give me what I deserve. I offered his share to him, but he did not accept it. I continued planting his share until I amassed so much." So the person did not accept his share. So this person kept, increasing this person's share, and he amassed cows and flocks of cattle, meaning like livestock. Then he came to me and said, "Fear Allah and do not violate my rights." Meaning now he's asking for more than what was promised to him, this worker. And he says, "Go to this cows and flocks and take them." He said, "Don't worry, I don't need any of this. You take it." So again, he's not worried about anything. He says, "You take it. I don't want to cause any amount of zulm, any sort of oppression. You take it." And then he says, "Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not mock me." I said, "I do not mock you. Take that cow and its flocks." So he took them and left. And then he makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, if you know that I had done this seeking your face, you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I turn to you, then relieve us of what remains." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed this calamity and this boulder, from them. Outwardly looking, that human insan could not remove that boulder. But it's authentic narration mentioned that they called upon their good deeds that were done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed their calamities for them. Two things we learn is, one, don't underestimate doing the amal salihah, doing good deeds. Second, do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person does so for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will be accepted in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the calamities. And what is the biggest calamity to be removed from us, inshallah, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves us from the hellfire. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may He give us the right understanding of this deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to continue to do a'mal salihah, do good deeds until our maut. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ease the afflictions that are upon the Muslims today. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make it so that their trials and tribulations are lifted, and make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the martyrs amongst the best of the shuhada. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. جزاك الله خير.